Hello! We hope you've enjoyed your time in the U.S. One of the last responsibilities you may have as a J-1 participant is to file your U.S. tax return. The U.S. tax code is complex, but this video will give you the tools you need to submit your tax return accurately and on time. The Internal Revenue Service, or IRS, is the U.S. government agency that collects taxes. All J-1 participants who receive payment during their program have a tax filing requirement and will need to file at least one form with the IRS. The U.S. tax season runs from January to April. Typically, your tax return for the prior calendar year must be filed by April 15th, though this date sometimes varies and can be confirmed on the IRS website. Depending on the length of your program and your compensation, you may be eligible for a refund of some of the taxes you paid. Your tax return will show your earnings for the previous year, the taxes you paid, and the total amount of taxes owed or refunded. Interexchange staff are not licensed tax professionals and therefore cannot provide tax advisory services. However, this video will outline the basic information you need to file your tax return on your own. You may also want to consider contacting a licensed tax provider who can assist you with your individual situation, typically for a flat fee or a percentage of your tax refund. It is very important, though, that you tell them beforehand that you are a J-1 participant non-resident alien so that they can properly assist you with your returns. Step 1. Complete Form 8843. Form 8843 isn't a tax return. It's a document that tells the IRS how many days you are outside of the U.S. during the calendar year. This helps them to determine your tax responsibility in the U.S. All J-1 participants, regardless of if you were paid or unpaid during your program, must submit this form. If you were paid during your program, then you will submit Form 8843 with your tax return. If you were unpaid, then you should mail a paper copy of your completed form to the IRS Center in Austin, Texas. Step 2. Receive your W-2 form. Your W-2 form summarizes your earnings and the taxes withheld during the prior calendar year. Your host employer will provide this form to you between January 1st and January 31st. If you don't receive your W-2 from your host employer by mid-February, contact your employer to request it. If you haven't departed the U.S. yet, you should ensure that your host employer has your home country contact information so that they can send your W-2 form to you after you depart. Note that if your program dates span multiple calendar years, then your host employer will send you a W-2 form each January, and you will need to file a U.S. tax return for each year in which wages were earned. Step 3. Complete Form 1040-NR. As an exchange visitor on a J-1 visa, you are considered a non-resident alien for tax purposes, and will therefore need to complete the non-resident alien tax form, or Form 1040-NR. Unfortunately, there are limited digital filing or e-file options for non-resident aliens. Unless you pay to e-file with a specific non-resident tax preparer, you must complete a paper copy of Form 1040-NR and mail it to the proper IRS branch. You may not use common tax preparation software tools such as TurboTax, which only supports U.S. resident tax forms. If you do use online software like TurboTax, you will probably incorrectly file as a U.S. resident, and doing so may cause the IRS to suspect you of tax fraud, even if this was unintentional. Once you receive your W-2 form from your host employer, you will fill out Form 1040-NR. You can access all forms, instructions, and tax information on the IRS website. Make sure to follow the instructions carefully as you complete the form. There are often accompanying documents that may also need to be completed, such as Schedule OI. Remember, make sure to complete Form 1040-NR, which is specifically for non-resident aliens, and not Form 1040, which is for U.S. citizens and residents. Before you finalize your return, you should determine if your home country has a tax treaty with the U.S. Some countries have agreements with the U.S. government that may affect the tax rate their nationals must pay. If your country has a tax treaty with the U.S., you should indicate this on your tax return so that you get the adjusted tax rate. Your completed tax return will indicate your tax liability. If you overpaid the U.S. government, they will issue you a refund. However, if you did not pay enough taxes throughout the year, then you must pay the government the amount you still owe. Step 4. Mail in your forms. Once complete, you must mail physical copies of your 1040-NR and other documents to the IRS. Make copies of all forms and checks prior to mailing them. We also recommend using a registered mail service with tracking options to ship your documents. Visit the IRS website for the correct mailing address, which depends on whether or not you are enclosing payment with your forms. Step 5. Receive your refund, if applicable. If you are owed a tax refund, you will indicate your preferred payment method on your tax return. You may either receive funds via direct deposit to a U.S. bank account, or you can request that a paper check be shipped to an address outside of the U.S. The IRS will not transfer funds via direct deposit to an overseas bank account. It may also be difficult to cash a paper check from the U.S. in your home country. Therefore, it may be in your best interest to leave your U.S. bank account open until after you've received your tax refund. Speak with your U.S. bank and your home country bank to determine which option works best for you. Step 6. State taxes. The 5 steps we've just outlined will help you file your federal taxes. However, there are separate forms for state and local taxes. These forms vary by state, so you will need to visit the website of your host state's Department of Revenue for these tax forms and instructions. Tax scams and additional resources. Finally, when preparing your tax documents, be cautious of individuals or companies offering to file your tax returns for you. Tax fraud and scams are not uncommon. Be on the lookout for warning signs of ghost preparers or those who file returns but refuse to sign the document as the preparer. Review information on the IRS website about other common tax scams and how to report them. As we mentioned before, InterExchange is not a licensed tax preparer, so if you have specific questions, we recommend contacting the IRS directly or selecting an IRS-approved tax preparer who can offer you guidance about your particular tax situation. We hope this information has been helpful as you prepare your U.S. tax return. As always, please reach out to us at InterExchange if you have any further questions. We're here to help.